Hello, everyone. My name's Dave Wright. I'm the University Chaplain at Puget Sound, and I'm one of the affiliated clergy that hangs around Emmanuel with gratitude for having a space where there is a depth of commitment to deep spirituality, intellect, the worship of God not as an obtuse, permanent fixture off in the sky, but in our lives, in our world, and in and among us, and despite us, the sense of the sacred woven into the fabric of all that is. In my role as chaplain at the University of Puget Sound, I find myself surrounded by some amazing students. And what I had prepared to offer as a reflection today was inspired by some of the work that they're doing around gratitude. Gratitude's always been an important theme for me, and one that I know I've shared from the pulpit at Emmanuel before and in these reflections in different ways over the past several months of COVID life. I also acknowledge we're living in a world, a place, and a time where whatever plans you make or whatever words feel meaningful to you one hour may be less so the next, as the pandemic, as our politics, as the chaos and tumult of our world roll and boil around us. Today's one of those days. We've been in the midst of what feels like an endless sprint of news cycles for months, years. And today is another of those days on Monday afternoon where we've passed another one of those milestones, as people keep calling them, markers we choose to artificially recognize the incredible death toll of this plague. I think what's hit me today, and what I want to invite us into a bit in this reflection, is the ways in which the grimness of our moment, whether it's the limitations on how we live, the threat to our lives themselves, threats to our democracy, perceived or real, all these things swirl and churn and burn, and where in that space is there a moment to pause and talk about gratitude, about hope, about the things that feed our spirits, the things that I had wanted to talk about as we watch a president engaging in actions that many of us feel are causing harm and threatening lives, as we look at a government in disarray, as we look at a political process in which almost all of us, regardless of party affiliation, are feeling stressed and strained and worn out. Where is there space in that kind of moment, with over 210,000 dead in this country that we can count so far? Where is there time to name hope? In trying to just recognize myself in that tension, that almost ripping apart of seeing so much incredible work for gratitude and hope and life in a world that is so broken right now, my mind took me to a book that I read for the first time probably over 20 years ago. Definitely over 20 years ago, closer to 25. It's a book called Loving in the Warriors by Sherry Moraga. It's an incredible volume, short, but mixed in Spanish and English, which for those of us who are mostly monolingual makes it a challenge. Mix of poetry and prose. And as the title suggests, it's about how do we find and live with love in a time of violence and loss. But Moraga, in her brilliance, does some great work at not just talking about the physical, traditional wars that we fight or that we remember, but the battles of life from childhood to sexuality to religion to race to street violence to the war that the U.S. often propagates against people of color. In her case, Latina woman, Chicana woman, and she names herself. The beauty of Moraga's book is that she moves back and forth in tones and terms that do not mince the words of pain and suffering that she has endured, that she sees her community enduring, that she sees her communities enduring, as she wrestles with being Latina and with whiteness and with being queer, but also knowing the power of majorities, and all of that in the frame of a 1990s, early 2000s America, that seems bent on waging war against her. I want to first offer one of the poems from the book. And as we think about the wars and the struggles that we're in right now, health, political, cultural, social, again, war not as the grand battle, but as the struggle, what would be framed in Islam as the jihad, the wrestling with God and with the world to try to find our way. Moraga writes this short piece called Minds and Hearts. The road to recovering what was lost in the war that never pronounced itself leaves no visible signs, no ration cards, sailor boys, ticker tape parades. The road to recovering what was lost in a war that never pronounced correctly. The road to recovering what was lost in a war that was never pronounced dead, missing in action, prisoner of our minds and hearts. Sherry Moraga. Prisoner of our minds and hearts. In my funk today of feeling tired of the struggles and the churning and burning of this world, the phrase that keeps coming back to me, it was that phrase about our minds and our hearts, the ways in which those imprison us when we are caught by the struggles, and that's all we have. I think is what drew me back to that book and that poem after probably a decade since I last cracked it open. In this space where everything that is wrong around us, and I'm not even naming our personal challenges and stresses and money and love and romance and family and all those things that of course are really at the core of our daily lives. When it's hard to get to those things because coronavirus, politics, the deeply riven nature of our social and political and community discourse, if those things, if those struggles are what truly holds us prisoner, if this war that we're living in, and war again in that broadest sense that Moraga means in her book, if we're held by those, what space do we have for continuing, for finding hope, for being nurtured? So I want to invite us into a few moments of silence after a prompt, because as hard as it is, we need to find those spaces to keep us going, to feed ourselves, to care for ourselves and one another. As a community, we try to do this, even in this weird remote headset and Zoom-laden thing that we're calling life right now. It was a joy, and it was life-giving for me to spend time with many of you, some of whom I hadn't seen in quite some time, on Zoom at Pastor Tad's ceremony. I just blanked on the name for it, but Pastor Tad's installation on Sunday. So I want to ask, in that spirit of not letting ourselves be held prisoner by all that is broken around us, take a few moments in silence, or if you're with someone tonight, or whenever you're watching this, and reflect on what are you grateful for? What things in life are filling your heart with gratitude? It can be big or small, but what is it that's filling you tonight? Feel free to pause this and take some time to reflect or to talk. I wish we could have this as a larger group conversation, but someday. The second question, and this is one that a student brought up. Like I said, it's that conversation with the students that has me so centered in this gratitude, this hopefulness right now, in the midst of everything else, of feeling imprisoned by these warriors. She asked our group, think about yourself a year ago. What has changed for the better since then? And that question blew the rest of us in the Zoom room away. What's better than last year? What's better than last year? that seems impossible for us to figure out, to know, to even consider. Think of the loss and the violence and the fear and the uncertainty. And yet with a few minutes reflection, each person in the circle could find a way, and often it was a very personal thing. It certainly, nobody brought up the state of this nation or the public health. But the 9 of us in that circle were all able to find some way in which we are in a better place in our heart, our mind, our spirit, in some way than we were last year. So I ask you, take a moment or two, again, pause the recording if it's helpful, but either in silence or if you're with someone when you're watching this, to have a conversation about that really difficult question. What is better today? How are you better today? How have you grown in the past year? The last question that I would have us think about for a few moments, or longer, depending on how your reflection and conversations go. What are the places in the midst of all of this struggle that, again, I'll riff back to Moraga, this war, this set of wars, this set of challenges that enfold us, that wrap us in wings that burn and tear. Where in that are you finding hope? Is it in a person? Is it in nature? Is it with people that you love? Is it in seeing things that are coming together to work for the common good? Again, in reflecting with students around this, the conversation turned to very personal things. And so, whether it's personal or social or political, take some time on your own or with someone to have that conversation. Where are you finding hope today? Pausing the video if you need to. It'll be here. I want to end with a couple of words about hope, coming from that, also from Moraga. If I can find the right page. Yeah. I'm not finding it, but what I'll come back to is the gist of it. That for Moraga, so often it is in her relationships that are often so broken. It is in her friendships, it is in her political collaborations, it's in her writing, it's in her community, it's in her culture. As we go into the week around us, knowing that in the roughly 2 days until this video is posted, so much more could change, will change. And that a week from now, yet again, we'll be in a different place. As we move through this exhausting set of cycles, I invite you to keep that last question, where do you find hope? At the forefront of yourself somewhere. Thinking about opening your eyes for, opening your heart for those people, those places, those lives, those loves, whatever it is that keeps you from being a prisoner to your minds and hearts in this season of brokenness. And name that. Share that with each other. Text or email me, chaplain@pugetsound.edu. Send it to folks at church that you haven't seen in a while. Share your hope. If nothing else, share it with yourself. And if you're struggling to find something, keep looking. But ask other people, where do you find hope? These conversations in this season, as the lights of daytime grow shorter, as I know the rains are supposed to move in and get pretty nasty this weekend, and as our world cycles and circles and struggles, being able to share gratitude and hope, I think, is one of the greatest gifts that we can give, because we are living in the war years. Not a giant military conflict, but the struggles, the tensions, the exhaustion, the losses that shape Moraga's experience, leading to this remarkable book, and that give us the opportunity to face some of the worst in the world, and through each other and through those that we love and care for and those who inspire us and the best of what we know, we individually and we as a community can be a face of hope and life and gratitude to those around us. I am always grateful for Emmanuel Presbyterian Church, for us as a collective, and for the people there who, even though I haven't seen most of us, we haven't seen most of each other in person in months and months, we continue. Be well. Take good care, dear ones. Blessed be.